It started with a single click. Not a headline, not a warning, just a lonely link buried deep in the endless maze of the dark web. The kind of place where search engines don't go, where usernames mean nothing, and where every page feels like it's whispering. You weren't supposed to find this. Somewhere in that darkness, a South Korean cybercrime analyst sat staring at a line of code that didn't make sense. A trace of movement, a flicker of data, something that shouldn't have existed in a network built to hide everything. He didn't know it yet, but that tiny digital footprint would detonate one of the largest global criminal investigations in modern history. The dark web has always been romanticized: hackers, secret markets, whistleblowers. But beneath that mythology sits an economy built on anonymity. Tor browsers, onion links, cryptocurrency wallets. Perfect tools for anyone who wants to vanish. For years, law enforcement knew horrifying crimes were being traded there like currency, but they couldn't find the source. Every trail went cold. Every server melted into another encrypted shadow. Until 2018. That year, a website called Welcome to Video quietly became the focus of a multi-continent manhunt. It was hidden behind layers of encryption, but its digital skeleton told a story. Thousands of transactions, thousands of users, and a single administrator who believed he was untouchable. The man at the center was Jong-woo Sun, a 23-year-old student from South Korea who loved computers more than people. He wasn't a hacker in the Hollywood sense, no hooded mastermind cracking satellites. He was something else. An engineer who understood how anonymity could protect evil. And he built a system that, for 2 years, lived inside the internet's blind spot. While Sun slept in a cramped apartment in Seoul, his website was processing Bitcoin payments from every corner of the world. Users thought cryptocurrency made them invisible. They were wrong, because while Tor hides your location, the blockchain never forgets. That tiny flaw became the crack investigators needed. In the United States, Homeland Security and the IRS were building new digital forensics units trained to trace money through blockchain analysis when South Korea's cyber team shared the strange data spike they'd found. A cluster of transactions tied to a single hidden service. Alarms went off across agencies. It wasn't the amount of money that caught their eye. It was the pattern. Hundreds of small payments, all converting Bitcoin to an identical wallet address. Someone had built an entire business inside the dark web, and the blockchain was quietly documenting every move. The hunt began. Agents pulled every fragment of metadata they could. IP timestamps, transaction logs, login behaviors. Each clue on its own meant nothing, but together they painted the outline of a network so large it seemed impossible. The site wasn't hosted on one server. It was distributed through hidden nodes around the world, a Frankenstein of stolen bandwidth. And yet, somewhere, there had to be a real machine processing those Bitcoin payments. That was the weak spot. Cryptocurrency leaves breadcrumbs, not names, but numbers. If you can follow those numbers far enough, eventually they lead to a place where the real world touches the digital one. An exchange, a wallet app, a bank. In March 2018, analysts traced one of the recurring Bitcoin addresses to an exchange headquartered in South Korea. When they subpoenaed the account information, the name that appeared wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't a gang, not a syndicate, not a hacker collective. It was a college student. Just one. The discovery shifted the investigation from anonymous web hunters to boots on the ground surveillance. Agents followed the signal to a small neighborhood in Seoul, where Sun's apartment looked like any other. But inside, his computer was running 24 hours a day, connected to servers abroad, encrypting and re-encrypting data every few seconds. When authorities finally moved in, the system was still live, a rare moment when the digital world collided with the physical one in real time. They expected chaos. What they found instead was almost ordinary: a cheap desktop PC, few external drives, a student ID on the desk. No hidden vaults, no elaborate defenses. Just one man who thought encryption was enough to keep the world away, but taking down Sun was only the first domino. Once the servers were secured, forensic teams began decrypting what they could. They weren't prepared for the scale. The database was massive, thousands of users, addresses, payment trails, and logs stretching across dozens of countries. Each record was a lead, each transaction a breadcrumb, pointing to someone who thought they were safe behind a screen. The next step required global coordination. South Korea reached out to the United States, the United Kingdom, and Europol. Within weeks, task forces formed to analyze the evidence. Dozens of agencies across 16 countries joined what would become one of the largest collaborative cyber operations ever attempted. And here's where the story flips. Because this isn't just about one criminal site, it's about the power of data and how technology built to hide people can also expose them. The same blockchain that made Welcome to Video possible became its undoing. Every single Bitcoin payment on the site was traceable. Investigators used advanced clustering algorithms to link wallets, reconstruct entire payment chains, and map them to real identities. It was slow, meticulous, and devastatingly effective. One by one, the anonymous users were no longer anonymous. For the first time, the dark web's promise of invisibility was cracking. People who had treated encryption like armor suddenly realized it was glass, and the ripple effect went far beyond this single case. Cybercriminals everywhere started to question whether the shadows were truly safe anymore. When the official press conference finally happened in 2019, reporters called it the biggest dark web child exploitation takedown in history. But behind the headlines was something deeper, a warning to anyone who believes the internet can erase accountability. Welcome to Video was gone, its servers seized, its founder arrested, and its users under investigation across the globe. Yet the echoes of that takedown reshaped how the world thinks about digital privacy, cryptocurrency, and the hidden web itself. Because what began with one curious click became a blueprint for how justice can reach even the darkest corners of the internet. The internet, you know, the one you scroll through every day, is barely the surface. Every Google result, every YouTube video, every public website sits on what's called the surface web. It's indexed, tracked, and monitored. But beneath that surface lies a place without search bars or filters, where pages don't have names, where you don't just click, you descend. That's the dark web. To most people, it's nothing more than a myth, a word thrown around in thrillers and hacker movies. But it's real. And for years, it's been the digital underground where anything that shouldn't exist finds a home. But here's what's fascinating. The dark web wasn't created for crime. It was built for privacy. In the 1990s, the US Navy actually developed the Tor protocol, short for the Onion Router, to let intelligence agents communicate without revealing their location. Layers of encryption hid the sender, the receiver, and the path in between. And when that technology became public, privacy activists saw it as liberation, a way for journalists, whistleblowers, and citizens under surveillance to speak freely. But freedom always has two sides. What started as a tool for anonymity soon became a tool for exploitation. Because when you remove identity from an equation, you remove accountability too, and people discovered they could sell anything. By the early 2010s, dark web markets were booming. Silk Road, Alphabet, Hansa Market. You could buy drugs, stolen credit cards, counterfeit passports, all hidden behind strings of random characters ending in one yana. Each site had encrypted chat rooms, escrow systems, and rating systems, like a twisted version of Amazon. When one market fell, another took its place. It was a hydra, cut off one head, two more grow back. This digital underground didn't just survive, it thrived. And as governments scrambled to understand it, one truth became clear. Anonymity wasn't just a right anymore, it was a business. People began selling access, hosting hidden services for a price, and running encrypted VPN chains that couldn't be traced. Entire economies formed where users paid to disappear. And in that environment, a single individual could build an empire without ever leaving their room. That's what made Welcome to Video so insidious. It didn't rely on hacking or viruses. It used the same infrastructure that protected activists and journalists, the same encryption that shields whistleblowers. Sunsite was built on Tor. Payments were made in Bitcoin. The servers were rented under fake credentials. It was, in every technical sense, a perfect crime. But there's a paradox at the heart of the dark web, one that few users truly understand. Anonymity isn't infinite. It depends on people, and people make mistakes. A mistyped command, a reused email, a misplaced log file. One human error can turn invisibility into exposure. And Sun made several. Investigators later discovered that some of the site's backup data wasn't fully encrypted. He had stored small system files in plaintext, files that included IP traces leading back to South Korea. That's what caught the attention of the Korean National Police in the first place. A fragment of code, a stray connection, a server pinging at the wrong time. That was all it took. Once they started watching the digital traffic, a pattern emerged, a sequence of connections that appeared every night around the same time. The server went live, processed data, and went dark again. Same window, same timing. And eventually, the cyber unit realized whoever was behind it lived in their time zone. The game had changed. They weren't chasing ghosts across continents anymore. They were closing in on someone nearby. But the real breakthrough wasn't the IP address. It was the Bitcoin trail. Cryptocurrency, the tool the dark web depended on, had just evolved. And so had the people tracking it. While some believed Bitcoin made him invisible, forensic analysts had started developing blockchain tracing techniques that could map every single transaction in the chain. You can't see who someone is on the blockchain, but you can see where every coin goes. And once a criminal tries to cash out on a public exchange, the moment anonymity meets the real economy, the illusion collapses. Each transaction left a digital fingerprint. And across those fingerprints, analysts built what they call transaction clusters, groups of addresses, all controlled by the same user. It was data science weaponized for justice. They weren't following suspects. They were following mathematics. That shift from human instinct to algorithmic precision marked a turning point in cybercrime investigations. For the first time, technology wasn't the villain. It was the hero. Within months, law enforcement agencies started connecting the dots between users and wallet IDs. The same patterns that made Welcome to Video profitable became the evidence that destroyed it. But even then, few realized how deep this case would go. Because when the network came down, it didn't just expose one man's website. It exposed an entire global supply chain of criminal activity that had quietly thrived under everyone's noses. And once the first domino fell, the world began to see how fragile digital anonymity truly is. What happened next would pull in agents from 3 continents, lead to hundreds of arrests, and forever change how the internet's hidden corners are policed. The story of Welcome to Video wasn't just about technology. It was about how the human desire to hide, to feel untouchable, can be undone by the very code designed to protect it. And as investigators closed in, the dark web began to fracture. Every hidden service suddenly felt vulnerable. Every user wondered if they were next. Because if the most secret site on the planet could be exposed, then maybe the dark web wasn't so dark after all. For months after the first clues appeared, the investigation ran like a ghost operation. No one outside a handful of cyber units even knew it existed. Every move had to stay quiet, because one leak could send the entire network underground again. South Korea's national police worked side by side with agents from Homeland Security Investigations and the UK's National Crime Agency. They weren't trading guns or raids. They were trading data. IP fragments, blockchain maps, login schedules, packet timing, digital crumbs that, stitched together, started forming the outline of a secret empire. The first major connection came from the blockchain analysis teams. By correlating Bitcoin wallets linked to the site with activity on public exchanges, they spotted a pattern: withdrawals that happened at night in Seoul, always within minutes of a particular IP address coming online. The algorithm didn't just flag it, it shouted it. The same digital heartbeat pulsed across both systems. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., analysts were building a visual map of the network, a web of thousands of wallet addresses radiating from one central hub. At the core sat a cluster labeled WTV01, short for Welcome to Video Primary Wallet. That hub wasn't just collecting payments, it was distributing them to sub-wallets that kept the servers running. Follow the coins, and you'd follow the operation. By late 2017, agencies had enough breadcrumbs to pinpoint physical infrastructure. The biggest breakthrough came when a German data center reported suspicious toy traffic on a Reddit server. Tracing that server's outgoing packets led straight to another node in South Korea. And for the first time, Investigators could see how the network mirrored itself across continents to stay alive. Mirror servers, backup relays, redundant caches, the digital version of a getaway plan. But every plan has a flaw. One of the mirror servers hadn't updated its encryption keys correctly. That tiny misconfiguration gave analysts a narrow window to identify its physical location. And once they had coordinates, it was game on. On March 5th, 2018, the Korean National Police staged a quiet surgical strike on the apartment registered to Jong-woo's son. No flashing lights, no headlines, just a small team of cybercrime officers walking into a one-room flat filled with humming drives. The computer on the desk was still logged into an administrative panel of the site. In digital investigations, that almost never happens. It was like catching a hacker mid-keystroke. The seizure was more than symbolic. It was technical gold. The hard drives contained server logs, encryption certificates, and full user databases, the keys to unraveling everything that had been hidden behind Tor. Within hours, forensic teams cloned the drives and started the painstaking process of decryption. What they uncovered stunned even veteran agents. Transactions linked to over 300,000 unique wallet addresses, tens of terabytes of data, and crucially, records of payments and usernames that connected to real-world exchanges in the US, the UK, Germany, and beyond. That's when the case exploded into an international mission. South Korea handed over the digital images to the US Department of Justice, and Operation Darkroom 2.0, the unofficial name used by investigators, was born. Europol coordinated the data sharing, while the IRS's Criminal Investigation Division took charge of tracing the Bitcoin flow. Every new lead produced another. A login here matched a purchase there, a wallet address tied to an email used on a gaming forum. The anonymity web was starting to unravel. Over the following year, authorities executed synchronized arrests across multiple countries. In the UK, investigators used blockchain-derived warrants to raid homes in London and Manchester. In the US, Homeland Security agents knocked on doors in Virginia, California, and New York State. Dozens of suspects were caught completely off guard. They had no idea a South Korean server could lead the world straight to them, but the digital pursuit didn't stop with arrests. Prosecutors needed irrefutable evidence tying users to the network, and that meant verifying every single transaction on the chain. Forensic accountants pored over the data for months, matching wallet IDs to real bank deposits, building what would later be described as the most detailed financial map of a dark web operation ever constructed. By October 2019, when the U.S. Department of Justice unsealed the indictment, the numbers were staggering. More than 300 individuals had been identified. At least 30 had already been arrested. And the server cluster that once powered Welcome to Video was dismantled piece by piece, its data preserved as evidence. The press conference announcing the takedown made international headlines. Officials emphasized not the horror of the content, but the innovation of the investigation, the way forensic technology had finally outsmarted the myth of the dark web. They highlighted how blockchain analysis, cross-jurisdiction warrants, and real-time collaboration had turned anonymous crime into traceable proof. The message was simple: the dark web isn't invincible. After the announcement, the cybersecurity experts called it a turning point. For years, criminals had treated Tor and Bitcoin like twin shields. Now those shields had cracks. Every future operation would carry the ghost of Welcome to Video, a reminder that encryption can hide your face but not your fingerprints. Yet behind the celebration was a quieter realization. This victory didn't erase the problem. It simply changed the battlefield. Dark web forums began migrating to even deeper protocols, experimenting with privacy coins like Monero and Zcash. Each evolution made investigators adjust, recalibrate, and learn again. Still, the fall of Welcome to Video proved something that every viewer should remember. There's no such thing as perfect anonymity. Every system, no matter how encrypted, connects to reality somewhere. An email, a power bill, a keystroke, and reality always leaves a trace. That's the paradox that fuels this story. The same digital world that hides monsters also creates the evidence to catch them. And every time investigators follow those invisible threads, they pull another secret out of the shadows. They called it Operation Dark Web. But among the investigators who lived through it, there was another name whispered over late-night calls: the web within. Because as they hunted the site called Welcome to Video, they began to realize something chilling. This wasn't just one criminal platform. It was a network stitched into the very code of the internet, hiding behind the same anonymity that billions of people trusted every day. It all started with a small digital fingerprint, a Bitcoin transaction. Back in 2017, when cryptocurrency was still a niche obsession, most believed Bitcoin was untraceable, perfect for crime, perfect for hiding. But they were wrong. An analyst from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security had been quietly following suspicious crypto trails. He noticed clusters of payments bouncing through dozens of wallets. Yet somehow, they all ended in one direction. The digital current flowed towards South Korea. Across the Pacific, in Seoul's National Police Agency, a cybercrime unit was facing its own mystery. Their analysts had stumbled upon a small piece of code, an onion link that appeared to lead to a marketplace hidden within the Tor network. No branding, no interface, just a title on the homepage that read, "Welcome to Video." It was an ironic name for what it hid. Through encrypted collaboration channels, both teams connected cautiously. In cyber investigations, one wrong move can collapse months of work. Even the timing of an email can tip off a suspect that someone's watching. So they worked through ciphers, code words, and burner communications. Their first challenge, finding the server. The dark web is not one place. It's a constellation of decentralized nodes. But this site had one flaw. Its video uploads weren't fully anonymized. Some data packets leaked through the Tor shield. That leak contained fragments of IP metadata, and in that metadata was something extraordinary. A physical address, somewhere in Seoul. For weeks, agents cross-referenced timestamps with domestic internet activity. And slowly, a pattern emerged. At odd hours of the night, traffic would spike from one IP address, only to vanish seconds later. One officer in Seoul described the night they found it as seeing a ghost become flesh. They located the server. But this discovery posed a dangerous question. How do you raid a ghost? The physical machine existed, but the network stretched across continents. The US, UK, Germany, and even smaller European states all had users feeding data into it. The site's administrator, still unknown, had coded redundancies to auto-delete if access was interrupted. They needed to move globally all at once. So they brought in Europol and the National Crime Agency UK, then the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, because of the Bitcoin trail. For months, agencies planned in silence. They mirrored drives, cloned servers, and built simulation environments to test how the system would react if one node went dark. Every variable mattered. And then came the moment they'd all been waiting for. A single coordinated sweep, an unplug from the shadows. In April 2018, at precisely 9 a.m. Seoul time, officers from the National Police stormed a nondescript building in a quiet neighborhood. Inside was a single computer tower, humming. It was the original server for Welcome to Video. As it was unplugged, mirrored hard drives across the world began seizing data in real time. IPs, crypto wallet addresses, username hashes. They'd cut the beating heart of the operation alive. But the mystery wasn't over. The more they dug, the more surreal it became. Thousands of Bitcoin wallets were connected, each representing a user across the globe. Some accounts traced back to professionals, students, even tech workers who believed they were untouchable behind Tor's encryption. Law enforcement realized they hadn't just found a website. They'd found a map of the dark web's underworld, and they were about to follow it, no matter how deep it went. The Unmasking, the arrest that shook the internet. When the server went dark in Seoul, it didn't just end a website, it triggered a chain reaction across the planet. For the first time, investigators had access to the full infrastructure of Welcome to Video, databases, IP fragments, Bitcoin wallets, and encrypted communications. Each byte was a breadcrumb leading to another corner of the dark web's underbelly. But before anyone could be named, the data had to be decoded. It wasn't simple storage. It was chaos, an archive encrypted in layers, like a digital Russian doll. Buried inside were usernames, hash keys, and addresses tied to crypto transactions. And somewhere in that labyrinth, the admin's identity waited. At the U.S. Department of Justice's Cyber Operations Center, agents worked day and night, cross-referencing the Bitcoin trail with blockchain analytics. It was a relatively new field at the time, pioneered by forensic teams that understood one critical flaw in the myth of crypto anonymity. Every Bitcoin leaves a trail. When investigators followed those trails, they began seeing something extraordinary. Hundreds of small payments, $20, $30, sometimes $100, each sent to a unique wallet address that later merged into a central pool. And from that pool, a pattern emerged. The digital current flowed again, straight back to one name, Sun Jong-woo, a 23-year-old South Korean who built the site from scratch. Welcome to Video was his empire. He'd created a minimalist system. No search engines, no public listings, just coded URLs passed privately within closed dark web circles. He relied on anonymity, Bitcoin, and Tor's encrypted backbone to keep his world alive. But Wu had made one fatal mistake. He reused a recovery email address, a seemingly random Gmail account that, once decrypted and cross-checked, was tied to his personal IP history. That single oversight pierced the veil of the dark web. By the time agents confirmed the identity, the network had already expanded its reach. Over 300,000 users, millions of transactions, thousands of Bitcoin, and now, with the data unlocked, law enforcement could see who they were. In the UK, early morning raids began. Europol kicked down doors in Germany, Spain, and the Netherlands. Across the US, Homeland Security, the IRS, and FBI units executed simultaneous arrests. In one of the most coordinated cyber operations in modern history, more than 300 individuals were taken into custody. Among them, teachers, engineers, IT professionals, ordinary people by day, living double lives online. The evidence was irrefutable. Each Bitcoin wallet matched payments. Each username matched login timestamps tied to physical locations. And in Seoul, the quiet man behind the keyboard was cornered. April 2018, South Korean police entered his apartment, small, unassuming, filled with computer parts and cables. Wu didn't resist. When they asked if he knew why they were there, he simply said, "I think I do." On his seized hard drive, investigators found 8 terabytes of encrypted data. It was the single largest dark web data haul in history. When the Justice Department unsealed the indictment months later, the world finally saw the magnitude of what had been uncovered. Welcome to Video wasn't just another dark web forum. It was a criminal ecosystem spanning 38 countries, built entirely on the illusion of invisibility. And its fall sent shockwaves through every corner of the internet. Forums went silent overnight. Dark web markets deleted their pages. Even longtime users began disappearing, fearing they left digital traces. The myth of the untraceable internet had just been shattered by a few lines of code and relentless human persistence. But for investigators, this was only the beginning, because when they decrypted the rest of the data, they found evidence of something even deeper, an interconnected web of other dark marketplaces using similar infrastructure. Welcome to Video wasn't an isolated monster. It was part of a digital hydra, and this was just one head. As one Europol officer described it, every time we cut one, 2 more grew in its place. The servers are offline, the arrests are made, the sentences are handed down. But in quiet rooms across the globe, investigators still see the faces. Victims still bear the scars. And the dark web continues to whisper. This wasn't just about taking down a website. This was about proving that even in the deepest darkness, light can follow. If this story shocked you, if it made you think, if it made you remember that evil often hides in plain sight, then like this video, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we have more stories about the crimes that hide in the shadows, and we're just getting started.